visitors are that are actually in Orkney. So right, so what we should do today is ask Pete, have you got any news?
Not really, no, I haven't been out much.
Yeah, I don't blame you, Pete. You're best off in staying in the house. What about you, Anne?
No, slipping and sliding about the snow, that's about it this week.
You sang on television, didn't you?
What's
We
that?
had the choir singing at the pier, and you were in it.
When?
It's going to be on television.
Oh,
Who
well,
was in
yes.
it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I said it either Thursday or Friday, they think, but it could be next week on.
Were you going to be on the telly?
On the telly, yeah, they lit the tree down on the pier.
Yeah.
And the choir, we were asked to go, and half of us went and and sang, and the group of Ukrainians switched the lights on.
Yeah.
And then some of the Ukrainian visitors, we sang some of our carols, and they sang some of their carols, and a lot of people came to see. There were, lots of people watching. And it's supposed to be on the telly, yes, on Thursday or Friday on the local news.
Your moment of fame.
Yeah.
I thought it was
very wonderful, really.
I thought it was on the One Show.
Yes, I think it. Yeah.
Yes, right, the One Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, I never watched that.
No, I don't. But I'm usually watching the news because I watch the Channel 4 news by preference. So usually that's on at the same time, but I'll have to make an effort.
Yeah.
Good. What about you, Andy?
No, I have nothing to add, I'm afraid. Didn't have anything to do with the One Show.
Right. Okay, we won't even go there. What about you, David?
Oh, nothing. Sorry.
Right. So I do believe we've already got Anne and Drina's news. So there's only two people left. Drina, on behalf of Idris, have you got anything that he wants to say this week?
No, I haven't been out, so nothing's happening.
Okay.
I get a bit nervous with the ice.
What's the latest with you and Idris? Are you, married?
Are you engaged?
Not telling.
Look, if I ever bump into Idris on my travels, I will give him your number.
Oh yes.
Right. So okay. What about you, Margaret? You're the one left.
No, I've got wax in my ear, so I can't hear very well. And unfortunately, you can't speak very well, so I think we're both going to struggle tonight.
Right. Okay. I think what I'll probably do is the problem is when you've got this, you can't be as enthusiastic as normal. So you've got to try and, not the word wing it, but try and give as much information as you can, and just try to sort of put some meat on the bones. So Margaret, right? I ask you. I'll ask Anne. What can you remember about a site without looking at it? A site known as Stenness from last week. What is it? I mentioned Stenness, Stennes, Stenness. There's two S's actually, but you can do it with one.
It doesn't come back to me, I'm sorry. I can't remember it.
Right, we can put that out to the audience, right? David, Gina, Andy.
Is there a stone circle?
Is that the one that you dance naked around late at night?
No, that was the Ring of Brodgar.
Ah, but these are the stones, aren't they? The stone circle.
But I will equally tell you a story about Stenness. There was myself and 7 others and a university lecturer called Martin Carruthers, right? So we didn't get off to a good start that day because he was going to meet us at the Ring of Brodgar and we were waiting at Stenness. So I ran all the way to the Ring of Brodgar, dragged him down, had a chat, and everything was fine, except he said, "Who are those two absolute idiots lying on that that stone that's recumbent, lying flat on the ground?" And I said, "That's nothing to do with me." It only turned out to be two of my regulars from my Bridgen class, a person called David and somebody that Peter will know, who Peter seduced, called Pat. And they were lying on this stone, and I said, "They're nothing to do with me." So there's some rather interesting things to say about Stenness in the sense that it's the lesser known of the two stone circle sites. And well, in that area, because there's lots of stone circles, isn't there, on Orkney, but in that area, the two big ones, and it would be good to start with giving you some information. So obviously what we've got to do, we've shown you the location. It's on the Ness. It's on the Ness of Brodgar. It's the southern part of the Ness of Brodgar, and it's the standing stones of Stenness, right? To sort of maybe help you out a little bit more, I didn't have this lined up, but what I will do is I will tap into Google to try and sort of get us into this. Right, so here we go, and if we can do this, I haven't, my amazingly enough, my daughter Bethan, that Peter's met, she actually had to have an operation on her throat, so she actually lost her singing voice. Oh. I can announce that she's able to sing again, which is great.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It basically wrecked her confidence. She basically turned away from wanting to do acting and everything like that, and she's come back to it. And weirdly enough, my one of my other children, Carrie Ann, she was doing a concert, and she had completely lost her voice. So she tells me 50 strepsils. Oh. And apparently she was able to get her voice back, but after she had done her performance, she wasn't able to sing again. So anyway, so what I'd like to do, just a little bit of a scratch and sniff today, to be honest with you. It's not going to be the same type of lecture that I'd usually do, and I do apologize, but you obviously know why. So what I'm going to do, we're going to look at this, and we're going to share, and we're going to try and get some sense of this now. And what we've got there is, if we click on there, what we've got is this again. So if you go back out again, that's Orkney, there's Kirkwall. If you come back in again, and what you've got is this area called Stenness, and it's so good that you can do this. But anyway, let's stop the silliness. So basically, you've got the Stenness, and you zoom in, you've got the Ring of Brodgar. It's not on there yet, but it is now. The standing stones of Stenness. And the one thing about the standing stones of Stenness is that I like the underdogs. I like the bits of our past that are sort of not really sort of up front, like the Ring of Brodgar itself. So if we can go back to sort of, if we can type in Stenness there, and these wonderful stones of Stenness, there was a certain type of awe about them. And if you can remember, it was these things that stick out. And surrounded by sheep today, as you can see, there isn't, this itself is not a complete stone circle. However, it may never have been a complete stone circle. So this is one of the things that we really start to think. Oh. What we've got, we're looking at all these images as we go through. That's the Ring of Brodgar there. I know. And if we sort of type in here, Stenness ring plan, we type in here, and it'll sort of help us out a little bit more to sort of understand what's going on. And there is a point to be made here. And this itself is all these lovely little plans. These are the Ring of Brodgar ones, right? Lots of other ones. So if we sort of go back up the screen again, right? And we start to think about this. And this is a plan of Stenness, right? And interesting enough, what you can clearly see there is there's the black ones are actually the stones standing today, right? And the ones there that are above 7 are the broken ones, and there's like a square in the middle, right? So one thing immediately that you can work out from this is that 7, 5, 3, and 2 are the upright stones. The ones that are marked there above 7 are the broken ones, and you've got 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 1. These there's no stones in them, right? There's no stones in them. So what does that mean? Well, it simply means one thing, that there may have never ever been any stones in them in the first place. That's the point. What we do as archaeologists, what we like to do is make sure that the past is in a sense of aspect. We like to think that, you know, everything is rosy and everything is the way that we think it should be. And if you can see number 12, that's really quite small to put a standing stone in. So the clue is that these pits may have been dug to put standing stones in at one point. You could equally argue that the standing stones may have been moved, right? But why? And it's all that sort of energy about the Neolithic period, which I'm trying to give you. When you go to the Ring of Stenness, you've got the idea that you know, the stones there are not a complete circle. But again, arguing this again, that they may never have been a complete circle. So this is one of the things that we need to sort of gravitate towards. The past is like today; it's not complete. No, nothing is complete. I mentioned one of my children, called Kerry Ann, who was actually sitting alongside me in my car about 3 hours ago, and when I said to her, "Oh, can I see?" She had her art book in front of her, and she said, "Dad, why do you want to see my art book?" And I said, "I want to see this picture that you drew." And she said, "It's not complete, but that's the way it's going to be." And I said, "Well, that's fair enough, because art is never a complete form of expression." Look at Van Gogh, where he would have painting above painting above painting, and there would be different layers of painting. That's art, but it's also equally the same when we think about archaeology and architecture, right? Archaeology and architecture doesn't always need to be a complete form of expression. This is going to be not relevant to anybody except for Peter. Peter knows that the town hall in Barry was never ever completed. They did the front bit, and they didn't have enough money to do the back. So when you look at it in later years, you think that's complete, but they say no, it was never complete, right? And that's a modern expression of something that should have been complete and it wasn't. So why can't people in the past not have complete forms of expression of what they want to express? Or equally, what they're showing us is what they wanted to show us. Those stones in black, those thick black ones, there. So when we look at the images, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So, you know, this is quite a robust statement. This may have been one of the first henge stone circle sites anywhere in Britain. Right, okay, I've used the word henge. What henge means is that there's usually a ditch around the outside and a bank. So the grey bit is the ditch. Right, and there may have been a raised bank. That's basically a henge monument. Basically like Avebury and Stonehenge. When I referred to Stonehenge, I sometimes referred to it as Stonehenge, or the stone circle at Stonehenge, because technically this is Stonehenge as well. The Ring of Brodgar is Stonehenge as well. It's just that, you know, Stonehenge happens to get that name. It's not a very original name, is it? Stonehenge. This is original. Stenness. Standing stones of Stenness within a henge. This might actually be one of the oldest monuments of its type anywhere in Britain. I want to take you. I want to drive you in mind over to Cumbria. This is not going to be relevant to Peter now. At Haverick, as you know, the open air prison. There was a near Haverick. No, I wasn't an open air prisoner there. Don't worry about it. I would sometimes go with my ex there, and we would. There, I think you might know where I am. There's a crossing, right? So we'd park the car, and there would be a railway crossing overlooking Haverick. And then we would go up on top of the hill, and there'd be some abandoned buildings, and there would be loads of little miniature stone circles. I remember going up there with lots of little miniature stone circles. So one thing I'm going to say to sort of get into your mind is those little stone circles that we can see in Cumbria, the ones I've just described, not our one at not our one at oh God, I need some help. Where is it? Not Raven's Glass. Oh God, help me on this one. What's the one in North Cumbria? Stone Circle. Everyone's gone dead. Are you all listening to me still?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't remember.
Oh, right.
In Little Meg and her daughters.
No, the other one.
No, the big one.
Castlerig.
Castlerig.
That's the one. Right,
Oh,
Castlerig.
Castlerig.
Castlerig is an old site, right? But the ones at Haverick are not. They're later ones because they're smaller. The bigger they are, the older they are, right? And when you think about, this is not really the rule, but when, right, to give you an idea, in prehistory, forget the Mesolithic now. In the Neolithic did things big, right? Because there was no sense of I own this land, you can't do this and that, right? So I need to sort of articulate this, right? So when you look about the Neolithic period, small numbers of people, and you're thinking about Curtis monuments and avenues and large monuments for the ancestors, large monuments for sort of burials, large monuments of monuments, so the megalithic landscapes, right? And then as people started to get a sense of territory and a sense of ownership, those territories got smaller and smaller, and therefore the monuments got smaller and smaller, and the sense of ownership got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So what happens is by the end of the Neolithic period going into the Bronze Age, you've got small stone circle sites, and by the end of the Bronze Age, you don't really have stone circle sites, and you've got small burials. And then what happens in the Iron Age is something really weird. In the Iron Age, about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, you've got these massive hill forts being built. They're not really forts, but these great earthworks like Maiden Castle, Hod Hill, those great monuments, and it's quite strange that suddenly they're doing big things again. And then in the Roman period, it's a little bit more organized. And then in the Anglo-Saxon period, it's a bit sort of laissez-faire. And then years go by, Norman stuff and all the bloody rest of it. And then what you get is in the 1700s, you've got the great landowners again who own literally thousands of acres of land. So they, in other words, my friends, they can do what they can do what they bloody hell like. So they can have these mass landscapes, ripping down trees, earthworks, capability brown type stuff, right? So that comes in, and connect chase and all those types of landscapes, and they come across monuments and they flatten them and so on. So it's like that progression of human mindsets, human psyche, and it's actually happened again, to be honest with, because what we're seeing, I've got a few commentators saying to me that what you do find is that you find that there's a sense of ownership now, and I know everybody's sort of English tonight. It's just a white Peter. I know everybody's English tonight, but I've got a couple of commentators who say, "Oh, you've got the English coming over here, buying up all the land, and they're making huge estates and so on," right? But then again, you could equally say that there's some one or two rich Welshmen going over the border, buying up large tracts of land. The point to be made there is not a political point or an English or a Welsh point. is that that's what's happening again, this sense of mass ownership, which is something that actually happened naturally in the Neolithic period. So I wanted to articulate that. I wanted to get that across. So this site itself, we'll look at some images. We'll try and get those images in our minds. So get that. So you've got, what have we got? We've got 4 standing stones there. We've got 2 on the floor, flat on the floor, number 1's on the floor. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sort of ditches. No, 8 pits, which are now sort of flat. And you've got this weird thing in the middle. What is that weird thing in the middle? Is it a burial? What is it? Well, we need to look at all this. This is, and when you look at this monument, you can't really see the ditch anymore, because I think part of it is actually under the car park. You can't really see the ditch anymore, and what you've got is another sense of looking and sort of a diatribe of trying to understand what is there and what isn't there. But what we do know is that these little pits here, the 8 of them, do exist, and we've got this thing in the middle, and we've got obviously those stones that are indicated there, and while not indicated there, are there. So this is actually part of the Ness of Brodgar landscape. This is, as you understand, Stenness. Okay, so you know, this is the start of the Ness, the start of the beginning. So historical environment Scotland is this is protected, it's scheduled, it's obviously Neolithic, and it's naturally publicly accessible all year round. Now what we do know is part of this landscape, not everything is there, some things are missing, right? And when I talk about some things being missing, you've got these nice little plans here, and sort of, you know, this one's a bit weird, but we'll just show it. You can see these stones, the ones lying on the ground. These ones there, those are the ones lying on the ground, right? And basically what you've got is the arrangement of these standing stones, 1, 2, 3. Now that's rather interesting, because when we look at that, when we look there, we've got 4 standing stones. So if we come back there again, we've got 1, 2. The strange thing is it looks like this stone, which is here, if we want to look back at the plan, which is number 5 on here, has been re-erected. That's been re-erected. So that's what we can ascertain. There's been an erection, there's been a re-erection of a stone. Now that for me cites a problem, because what we're doing, we're reconstructing the past in the way we feel that it was reconstructed. This may sound absolute nonsense, but I'm going to say it as it is. You know me, I'm going to say it as it is. How do you know that that stone number B was ever placed up? How do we know that it was ever an erect stone? How do we know that? So what we've got C, we got that one there, so we got there. So if we go back again, right? Now the interesting thing is you've got number 7 on there. How is number 7 represented? We know how that's represented. So if we come back again, right? Now, what's going on here? Because it looks like there's more stones on this plan than there is on the other plan. That's rather interesting, but that might be for another day. But it's good that we've got earlier plans and sort of descriptions like this, and it's giving some sort of elevations, it's giving some indications, it's giving some sort of sense of the landscape. I like these earlier plans. It talks about the ditch and the bank are very slight. So we were talking about a bank, which strange enough is not shown on here. The bank isn't shown. We've got the ditch, but we haven't got the bank shown. Probably because the bank is basically completely gone. I would like to know. It would be good to know. Have we got a date on this one? Yes, we do. We got 1851. So this was originally planned in 1851. So since 1851, at least one of those stones has been re-erected. And there we go, the small circle of Stenness. That's really interesting because it's another way of saying the Stenness. Stenness, is that the original name? But there's been some changes since what occurred in, there we go. We go back down again, 1851. This is sort of a little bit of the planning of the stones on the ground. You know, it's interesting to see that one there on the left has been re-erected. It's sort of been re-put up, and you know, those two are standing, and that's been re-put up, and these ones are sort of on the ground. So, you know, there's again, why do I feel that it is not an accurate representation? Because for me, you're interfering with the past, and you know, it's trying to get everything. You know, it's trying to get everything into perspective and to try and work out what the past was exactly like. And in many ways, we're never going to know what the past was like. We're really, really not. And if we sort of go again, what will you do? Yeah, go on.
Just on that plan, it was showing them all in a straight line as well, which was even weirder.
Oh, Andy, I wish you hadn't showed. I wish you hadn't mentioned that.
Oh, sorry,
really,
forget it. I didn't say anything.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say anything, Andy. Yeah, you are right. It is showing them in a straight line, but obviously, can we use the word artistic license?
Yeah.
We'll use the word artistic. One second. Hello. 1 second. Yes. No problem. Yeah. No. What it is? I live at the top, and I can't get my car up the hill. So basically, I'm going to grit the road tomorrow. Because I've gritted most of it, but none of the residents will bother gritting the road. So it's just down to me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grit the road in the morning. And I'm going to drive my car up. I'm teaching online at this minute. So just above Gwen's. Pengairwen. Yeah, that's the one. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Hiya, folks. Are you there still?
We're still here.
Yeah.
It's Andy's fault. We all went to pot then.
Oh, I knew you were going to get interrupted. You see, I thought you needed something.
Can I just ask about the shape of the shape of the stones, the odd slanting shape at the top? Are they unique to Stenness, or do other stone circles have that shape?
Shut up. And the reason why, because the reason why, right? The reason I tell you to shut up is because that's an important point. Because if you look at, for example, the Ring of Brodgar, right? You can see the shapes of these. These are some of the stains at the Ring of Brodgar, not Stenness.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Stenness, right? There was a point made about this, which we will come on to. So don't do it yet. And there you go. So those two stones there, it's sort of lining up. You know, you've got all this type of weird stuff going on there. So if we go to those two stones, right, and we go back to the original plan again, right, and there we go. You've got those two stones there, and you've got a flat stone, and you've got these four stones standing up, and it's just sort of a play with words. But what I'm really focused on more is 7, 5, 3 and 2, and more 5, 3 and 2. So those are the ones that we're really interested in. And yeah, you did, your point is very valid, but I'm going to leave it for now. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, there are some stones that are now gone because there's a stone known as the Odin stone, which had a hole in it, right? So if we go, which I wasn't going to do today, but you're into your stones. So what we're going to do, we're going to type in the Odin stone, not the Odin ring, the Odin stone at Stenness. Stenness. So what we got there. And there we go. This Odin stone itself, right, thought to have been erected 5,000 years ago. The Odin stone, or the stone at Odin, stood approximately 2.5 meters high with a breadth. So what we're going to do, we're going to read about the Odin stone without knowing much more. As we passed the bridge of Brodgar, we could dimly descry the standing stones of Stenness on the eminence. But today, looming in the darkness like a regiment of grim spectres, as we approached the stone of Odin, it appeared to be larger and more unshapely than usual, and all the ghastly traditions surrounding it flashed through my mind. Until the winter of 1814, a stone monolith stood in a field by the standing stones of Stenness. This was going over the Ness. So over the road bit, there was 2 stones there. This was one of them, and it had a hole in it. Yeah, this stone occupied a particular special place in the customs, traditions, and law of the Orkneydian people. Thought to have been erected 5,000 years ago, the Odin stone stood approximately 2.5 meters high with a breadth of about 1 meter. So it was a fat stone. The location of the Odin stone was unclear until May 1988. Basically, it disappeared. It disappeared when archaeologists surveyed over 8,000 meters of land surrounding the Stenness stones, uncovered socket holes for several stones, and finally the socket of the Odin stone itself. The whole monolith was shown to have stood approximately. So basically, they found the hole that this stone was in at one stage, but now it's no longer there. The whole monolith was shown to have stood 140 meters to the north of the standing stones of Stenness. For me, it doesn't seem that far, to be honest with you. It seems like over there, but between the stone ring and the current house aptly named Odin, a socket hole for a second megalith would indicate that the Odin stone was once one of a pair. But although the monolith had stood absolutely for millennia, thousands of years, the Odin stone's destruction took less than a day.
Huh?
Do you want that story? We're going to have it.
Yeah.
But before we have that story, let's just see if we can see any other images of the Odin stone. There is basically what there was 2 stones, right? There was these, there you've got a little bit of a footbridge, right? Now it's like a proper road, it's been filled in and whatever, right? So you've got the Odin stone there and there. So naturally, back in the Neolithic period, you could walk over there and there was no water, right? So that's in the distance. Actually, the Ring of Brodgar is about, I would say about 1 kilometer from these, but that's, well, give or take a few meters, right? So, and then behind this was the Ring of Stenness, right? So if we go and look at the Odin stone from 1814, right? Now, we're going to tell you what happened. And I don't want to tell you what happened, but this is an illustration from the late 1700s, I'm told. So if we go back to, it's called Orkney, right? Orkney, there you go, orkneyjar.com is brilliant, right? I don't use it always when I'm doing my stuff on Orkney, but I sometimes go to it, which I'm doing now. So destruction. In 1814, the man who leased the land on which the stone stood, an incomer by the name of Captain W. Mackay, waged an attack on the Stenness megaliths. Bloody Scottish people. Orkney is definitely not Scotland. At the time, the Odin stone and the circles of Stenness and Brodgar still played a major part in common Orkneydian tradition. Because of this, large number of people visited the ancient sites regularly. According to Mackay, this was ruining his land. So he set out to tear down the stones. He began with the Odin stone, which he destroyed in December 1814, allegedly using the stone fragments to construct a house. This misguided ferry loper, in other words, he's from Scotland, right? He's a Scotsman. The dialect word used to describe non-Orcadians living in the Isles was already not well liked, and his destruction of the monolith did nothing to improve this. The native Orcadians were so infuriated by Mackay's actions that various attempts were made to burn down his house and holdings. Oh, bloody good job. Then on Christmas Day, oh, this is really appropriate, isn't it? I didn't know this. On Christmas Day, 1814, a local historian in Kirkwall heard of Mackay's plans and involved the law who executed, assist, and suspension against him. By this time, however, Mackay had already toppled one of the standing stones of Stenness and obliterated a second. Right, so that explains the one that was lying flat. I didn't know that. And obliterated a second. That's basically, I'll talk about that in a moment. The monolith faith, though Orcadian tradition maintained that the fragments of the Odin stone were used for building materials, in the 1950s, the local antiquarian Ernest Mackwick could find no evidence to prove that this was actually the case. He did, however, discover that the main portion of the stone, the whole segment, survived into the 1940s before it too was completely destroyed. My question is why? But this section of the stone, Marwick learned, had been used as an anchor for a horse-powered mill shaft. Oh my God, it gets better. That moved around the parish of Stenness as the mill changed hands. When it was finally decided to replace the horse-drawn mill with an engine-driven threshing machine, the old mill was uprooted and lay around with the Odin stone fragment gathering moss. Then the day came that the owner's son decided to tidy up and remove the old machinery. Unable to move the stone segment and ignorant of its history, he smashed it to dust. And that survived until the 1940s. And there's a story I want to give to that in a moment. His unwitting destruction of the Odin stone fragment closed a chapter of Orkney history, but it also aroused the fiery wrath of his father, who exclaimed, "You had no damn business to break that stone. That was the stone of Odin. That came from Barnhouse." And the story I'd like to make is that in the area of Barry, Peter will be aware of this because I mentioned it. In the area of Barry, Pete, before you say, do you want me to do that lecture tomorrow about Pembrokeshire? Yeah, it might be a good idea. One thing in Barry is that there were standing stones marked on the maps up until the 1920s over in one part of the Barry area. So Pete'll know this, come Kitty. And they disappeared, right? So even though we get monuments of prehistoric dates surviving into the 1900s, it doesn't mean to say they're any safe. And also I'd like to make the point, and I made this several times, when I went to Orkney and met up with my wonderful lecturer, supervisor, Dr. Simon Clark, he basically said, up until the 1980s, there was nobody protecting the archaeology of Shetland. And I've already told you that many archaeological sites were just destroyed and demolished by the oil companies because nobody was protecting them. And this was in the 1980s. So, you've got whole Pictish, Viking, medieval sites, prehistoric sites just demolished. And this is up until recent times. So when you think about HS2 and the damage done to the sites involved in HS2, you start to think, well, it's HS2 is destroying the archaeological sites and natural history of our country. It's nothing new. Politically, I'm not a fan of HS2, and I think it should be stopped. But some of you might disagree with me. But that's my point of view. So I wanted to tell us about that. And you know what? I've hardly done my French bugger all on the history about Stenness. So I think I need to crack on, but I might need a little bit of a break in a couple of minutes. But we'll go back to that image. And what we're going to do is we've moved away. And we're going to type in, I've lost my thingy a minute. So let's just go on. Ring of Stenness. You know, I was absolutely gutted when I had a phone call earlier on. It was like, oh, do you want to come for an interview for a job? And an acting job. And I thought, with a voice like this. Anyway, hopefully it'll be good next week. I'm hoping. Right. So again, looking at these images, there's lots of beautiful images of Stenness, and it's very much that there has got all the stones on it. The one on the right there, and that's the one we're going to do. So I think we've already established the stone that came down was that one there, right? That one there, the big one there. That one's okay. And if I can remember, I'm not really sure of this, but I think Martin Carruthers said that that stone over there, the one in front of these two little weird stones standing out, was actually may have actually been dragged from here. This is the one in front that was actually destroyed by that silly idiot McKay. And sort of trying to, and this isn't this not sort of? Can I just make a point here? I'm going to argue that maybe that stone there should have actually been remained on the ground and should never have been re-erected, because that stone being demolished was part of the events of 1814. And when it was re-erected, how do we know that that stone itself was actually put in the right position? Do you see what I'm trying to say? In many ways, the events of 1814 cannot be changed or altered. That's how I feel, and I'll just mention that as it is. And I do believe that if you look in the distance there, that little thing sticking out there is actually the island of Hoy. I think it is actually. I'm not sure. I think it is. Anyway, so what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of information, and then we'll take a little bit of a break. And I'm going to say now that I'm really not going to be able to hold this out until sort of 9:30 or anything. So if I need to stop, I'm going to do so. So one thing that we do know is that we've got the surviving stones are sited on a promontory looking out towards the Ness of Brodgar. And again, maybe what I need to do is just sort of get a little bit of a plan on there. Hang on a minute, just sort of if we get that little bit of a plan up there again, and we sort of, I don't know what the hell's going on there. I don't know. No, we got that. So if we go there, and we've got that there, if we do another one there, and we go there. Okay, we're all over the place. So what we need is a locational plan now. Ring of Stenness. We need a map. That's where we're going to go now. So there we go. We got it again. Okay. So if we can look there, we've got the Loch of Stenness and we've got the Loch of Harry. And remember, in Neolithic times, both of these locks would not have been that size, if they're at all, really. And that little one there, if we move in there a bit, we've got the standing stone there, and on the opposite side there would be the Odin stone, and that's the Barn House site as well. So these stones themselves, it says surviving stones. Obviously the southern end of the Loch of Stenness on the left, and the fresh water. So interesting enough, the Loch of Stenness, and I forgot this detail, the Loch of Stenness on the left is a saline loch, strangely enough. And the Loch of Harry on the right is fresh water, but there's nothing really stopping the water flowing between these 2 points, which is quite odd. I can remember that was a bit of a weird one when I was there. The name, which is pronounced Stenness, right, which could be in the beginning, or Stain as in stone of Ness. The beginning of the nest, the stones at the beginning of the nest, Stenness, S-T-E-N, Stain. And as Peter will remember, the Ring of Stains, which was just as we were coming to John O'Groats, wasn't it, Pete? That was the Ring of Stains, which is a stain is an Old Norse word, which could actually equally mean stone, right? Or it could mean the stone headland, which leads over to, so it's the beginning, the stone headland, but the main word stain is actually Old Norse meaning. So that's where we get the name from, Stenness. Multiple meanings, which is rather interesting, which is probably why we get stuff in the Welsh languages, which just got multiple meanings, but this is a completely different language altogether. So basically, that spot there is obviously you've got the causeway going over. And yeah, I was right in saying that the Ring of Brodgar from the standing stones there is about 1 kilometre at least in a northwesterly direction. So there we go. Ness of Brodgar, where you've got the excavations, and you've got the Ring of Brodgar there. It's all over the sense of 1 kilometre. So, and what we've got is this is just over a kilometre away northwest of the Maes House site, and this is a great Neolithic landscape. This is a great Neolithic plethora of archaeology. But interesting enough, we've mentioned the Odin stone. One stone that we haven't mentioned is the Stenness watchstone, which is that one there, which is on the left-hand side overlooking the Loch of Stenness. And then you've got the Odin stone, which would have once looked over the Loch of Harry, but obviously more in modern times rather than having the locks in existence in the Neolithic period. So maybe what we should do is mention the Stenness watchstone, the one on the left, which is still there. So if we sort of go with that, and we say go there, and we sort of go back to that, and we go there, and we go with this, and we write in the Stenness watchstone. Again, one of the things I can remember being on Orkney is that there would be standing stones absolutely everywhere, and not all of them recorded either, because it's been a land. Basically, you've got fence posts which are standing stones, and I think what we've got is there's the watchstone, looking all alone. Look at that tall stone there. The stone sticking out, and you notice the way it's been cut. And Margaret, don't let me get away with telling you about these, okay? So that one is cut at an angle, but the Odin stone wasn't, right? Which takes you all the way down to the avenue, the West Kennet avenue that leads in a southeasterly direction from Avebury. Which you've got fat stones, and you've got tall stones and chevrons, tall stones with whatever, and this is what you've got. But what we need to do, why don't we mention a little bit about this watchstone and what individual stones are as fascinating as stone circle sites. You know, they really are, because you know, if we've got one, say for example, there we go, there's a whole entry again. The watchstone, it's this Orkney jar. We've got a nice little bit of information on it there, and we're going to read it. Midwinter connection. There's loads of fascinating things with this, nice images with snow, which is quite appropriate, to be honest with you. So here we go. Close to either side of the southern end of the bridge, which leads across to the northern promontory, stands a grey sentinel stone. This was written by James Wilson. A voyage round the coasts of Scotland and the Isles, 1842. Well, this was in 1842. Remember, Mackay was there in 1814, and he took the Odin stone away. So by 1842, this is the only stone that's there. Now, can I just mention another point? And I'm not really sure I can articulate this properly, but I'm going to give it a go. 1 second. Just because, oh my God, it's the drink. Just because something is Neolithic, you always think that Neolithic object is, you know, there's been nothing else around. Now, when this James Wilson went there, he was probably made aware that there was the Odin stone. But then again, maybe he wasn't, and maybe he just saw this stone as being alone for all those thousands of years. If you can see the point I'm trying to make, if not, then I'm going to carry on. One of Orkney's most imposing monoliths, the Watchstone, stands a short distance to the northwest of the standing stones of Stenness, which we know 140 meters, where isn't it? 120 meters, towering over the Brig O'Brodgar. The solitary stone giant stands at the point the Stenness and Harry Lochs meet. The saline on the left, which is Stenness, and the freshwater on the right is Harry, just over 5.8 meters high. Can we just recap with that? Shouldn't I have asked how tall you think that is? Read that again. Just over 5.6 meters high. That's one bloody tall standing stone. There's not many standing stones that height, and it may have been maybe 6.5 meters tall at one stage. But then again, it may have actually been covered with more soil, so it could have been lesser in height. There's those different ways of looking at this. This is one of the things that we believe with these standing stones occasionally, is that they may have actually been covered in earth, and only the tops of the stones were meant to be seen. That's another point for another day. We know the Watchstone was once, as we know, once one of a pair of standing stones, outliers to the stone of Stenness Circle, that perhaps marked the approach to the Ness of Brodgar. Now we're assuming that these stones are connected to Stenness, and we're also assuming that this lower circle to Ring of Brodgar is actually connected to the Ring of Brodgar as well. But if this stone circle was built first, you see my point, there was no approach to the Ring of Brodgar because the Ring of Brodgar was built later. So this was the stone that you could say that the Ring of Brodgar was built in the north as an alignment to the other ring. You can look at it that way. So a second stone discovered in 1930, the stump of the Watchstone's companion was unearthed in the bank by the side of the road. The stump, which was removed at the time, was close to the edge of the Stenness Loch. Oh my God, I didn't know that bit. So in other words, what we're talking about is every single time the Odin stone could have probably been put back together, but they lost it, didn't they? They can't say any more. The stump measured 1.5 meters wide, and 12.7 centimeters thick, and at least 90 centimeters high. But what that was left of it, it was aligned exactly northeast and southwest at an obtuse angle to the Watchstone. Its discovery led to the theory that the two stones were the remnants of the southern eastern section of a large stone circle, the rest of which has disappeared when the level of Stenness Loch increased. So in other words, what we're talking about is another stone circle. Instead of being two stones lying alone, this was part of another stone circle. You see what we've done there? Instead of looking at these two stones as being just two stones, they may have been part of another stone circle. It has long been suggested that the two massive megaliths were once part of a stone-flanked ceremonial. Oh, this is another way. It was an avenue. Oh, okay. So somebody's saying it's a stone circle. Next, we're talking about a stone-flanked avenue, which I just mentioned earlier on. So a stone-flanked ceremonial route between the Ring of Brodgar and the standing stones of Stenness complexes. Other megaliths said to have been part of this procession were including the Odin stone, the Comet stone, and two unnamed standing stones outside the Loch of Lochview. There's lots of other stones. I was presuming that the stone that they found was actually the Odin stone. It must have been. I don't know what they got confused. We'll go with what that. Shut up, Pete. Anyway, yes, Pete. So, Pete, I'm thinking, when it talks about the Odin stone being different than this one, it sounds like that the Odin stone was the stump, doesn't it? Yeah. That's how I'm reading it.
The emphasis on the two stones together are obviously lined up on something for during sunset and sunrise.
That's where we're going to go, Pete. However, a
Right.
series of geophysical surveys
The
carried
twin
out
stones.
across the
Yeah.
Nessa Brodga have found no evidence of any stone avenue. However, it doesn't mean to say it never existed. As we see, basically the Brockhampstead Avenue leading to Avebury, there's only 2 stones left of it, right? The one which was on the western side of Avebury, where there were 2 avenues. Another, actually, there was another suggestion that there were 4 avenues leading to Avebury, but we're not doing Avebury at this minute. But avenues were something that the Neolithic people liked to do. Another suggestion is the twin stones may have represented a series of symbolic doorways between the 2 stone circles. Interesting. Peter, there you go, a midwinter connection. Local man Charles Tate has highlighted an interesting connection to the watchstone and the midwinter solstice. So there we go. If we look at that image, we can go along there, and you've got the house, and actually that's a barn there. The stones are beyond that. The stones are way beyond that. So you've got 1.2 kilometers, and that's 1.2 kilometers. Stenness. So you've got 1 kilometer from here, so you can't really see them. So, and it goes on to say, from the watchstone view in the winter solstice sunset, the sun disappears behind Ward Hill on Hoy for a few minutes before being reborn briefly at the bottom of the hill's northern slope. Oh, right, I was right. When we saw that photograph earlier on, I said that looks like Hoy. Well, yeah. So there you go. That aligns over that way towards the southwest. Briefly at the bottom of the hill's northern slopes, and before being reborn, briefly at the bottom of the hill's northern slope. A few days after the solstice, the sun sets behind Ward Hill, but this time reappears in a horizon notch formed by the island's hills. This phenomenon prompted the idea that the stone was perhaps a marker for watching the sun's progress as it sets further and further south. The various marked points afforded by the Hoy Hills would allow the watcher to gauge the approach of the solstice. And thanks to Charles Tate for those images. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a short break.
Those
and,
2 stones there are lined up with something during sunset and sunrise.
And there you go, the Ward
Yep,
Hills.
those 2.
Yeah, but that's not the stone he was talking about. So these look like they're aligned with something as well. So
Well,
yeah,
they are
good
aligned.
point.
Yeah, we when we seen them, we looked through them, and they did seem to be aligned with something. I can't remember what it was. You need to look through the gap between the stones from the other side.
Yes, yes.
Then the shadow,
Exactly.
the sun ray shining through that gap during sunrise or sunset pointed towards something special.
And yeah, special. And there is something else, is that these 2 stones are not in sync with the other stones. They're sort of put off angle. So when you think about it, the site means one thing, and then it means another. Then there's additions, and it means something else. So that's the point. But those, thanks for that. And these bits with the tops are relevant. So people, what we're going to say is, I'm going to continue on for as long as I can, and we'll just have a few minutes break. And there's still quite a lot to go through. But still a bit to go through. Yes. So anything anyone wants to say before we have a quick break?
Can I just ask about the names of the stones? If you give it a name, it makes it a significant thing, and it might be like an inaccurate name. I'm finding this a bit difficult to explain, but it gives it a character that it shouldn't have.
Actually, I'm going to jump in there. You're completely right. Basically, if it's Norman name, right, not a Norman name, a Norwegian name, the Norwegians came to Orkney 1,000 years ago, over 1,000 years ago, 1,200 years ago, which was which was depending on the date of this stone circle, which we really haven't given you yet, right? But if we're presuming that the stone circle was in excess of 5.5 to 6,000 years, that means that this stone circle existed at least 4,500 years before the Norwegian names come in. So what you're saying is completely correct. Talking about an Odin stone, Odin didn't exist in the Neolithic period. So you are very, very right. So yes, so they've got so these stones have a different meaning, and when you a different meaning to do with their names. So if you're talking about this is a processional route between the two locks, well, the two locks didn't exist back then. It was just moorland with like houses and stuff, right? So what you're doing is interpreting these monuments on what the landscapes looks like today and not what the landscape looked like in the past. And the other thing as well is I see Pete's point about those two stones lining up to the hills, but it could have been in the Neolithic period that there were trees in the way. So they could have been equally lined up on something else.
Do you know if it goes back so long ago, would the sun be in a different position?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Not much.
So what we're looking at is wrong.
You're right. And when people look at Stonehenge and they say it's perfectly aligned, and you're thinking, well, it wouldn't have been that alignment back then. It would have been a different alignment. So what were they looking at then, and what we're looking at now is something completely different.
Yeah.
When I went to Stonehenge, for example, when I went to Stonehenge, I tell you what, right? I'm going to spit it out. Going to Stonehenge at a solstice was one of the worst experiences I've had involving archaeology in my life, because basically Stonehenge allowed it open, and there were people on top of the stones rocking the stones at Stonehenge. They were urinating against the stones. They were having sex, all sorts of things, right? And it was just like, I'm thinking, hang on a minute. For all the year, right, you allow these absolute idiots for one day of a year to do exactly what they want. And I just had to walk away because they were celebrating something that clearly doesn't exist. Druids never existed. The idea of druids didn't exist in the minds of anybody until about 1,900 years ago. This is 4,000 years earlier. And when Pete talks about Celts and things like that, even the idea of Celts and anything like that didn't exist for another 4,000 years. So basically, when you're thinking about any of these things, the perception is very different back then than it is today. But what we do is put modern day perceptions on the past, which is the wrong thing to do.
Would the moon be in a different position?
Well, the Earth, the moon.
I was going to say the alignments, they're kind of often cyclical, and sometimes they are similar to what they were thousands of years ago, and sometimes they aren't, but they can calculate exactly where they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they do vary a lot. So
yeah, we'll go with the do vary a lot. That's a good word. Right, David or Margaret or Anne, anything else you'd like to say, and Pete?
No, thank you.
I was wondering, do we know that they are all contemporary?
No.
Yeah.
The ring of Stenness predates the ring of Brodgar. So if you're talking about the ring of Stenness was constructed as the precursor to the ring of Brodgar, you're completely wrong, right? And when artists show the ring of Brodgar from Stenness, you can't exactly see it because there's like a hill in the way.
Is it possible that some of the stones went to the ring of Brodgar then?
Ah, yeah.
I'm guessing somebody's already checked that though.
The thing is, most of the stones for the ring of Brodgar come from the rock, which is by the ring of Brodgar.
All right, yeah.
Oh, they've located the source of where they got the stones from.
And it doesn't necessarily mean to say that the ring of Brodgar is complete. Why do we need that these stone circles are complete?
Yeah.
Right.
Can I just ask, it might be a stupid question, How do
It's
you
never
date? Well, they're all stupid, aren't they? How do you date when a stone is erected? And
You look
how
for the-
can
you
you
look-
date the rock?
You look for the pound coin underneath it.
Don't talk nonsense. You look for the £2 coin underneath it. But no,
Yeah.
the-
Scotland.
No, Orkney, silly man.
Yeah. Orkney.
Right, anyway, King Charles Zero from, anyway, the point is, to date when the stones are placed there, you've got to take the stone out of the ground and look directly what's underneath it to try and find out when the stone was put there. Now it's possible, right, with modern day technology, to lift out the stone out of the ground and then to look using thermoluminescence techniques when that bit of the soil was last exposed to the sun, indicating exactly when the stone was actually placed in the ground. But that would never happen because it would mean destroying the monument to actually get the date.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well is, right, you would know the date when that stone was erected. What about the other stones? Doesn't mean to say that the stones were erected all at the same time, but they wasn't. You look at Stonehenge. Stonehenge was built over 2,000 years.
They would have taken ages, wouldn't they?
What they need to do is train one of those Orkney voles to dig down underneath and bring a sample back.
Yeah, that's what they've done, and we've got a precise date. Yeah, and these are special intelligent Orkney voles.
Absolutely. They are special.
They've been longer. Exactly. They've been longer than most Orcadians can trace their bloodline to Orkney. And they've been there a lot longer than Cornwall has ever existed, because it was once part of England. Right. Okay.
In your dreams.
Yeah.
Let's have a very, very short break and we'll be back soon.
All right then.
2 minutes.
Are there any books in our library, Margaret, on Orkney?
I don't know. I'll have to have a look. I'm sure there must be.
I don't remember seeing any.
There was quite a few on Scotland, weren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look. Shall I go and have a look now?
No. Wait till it's warmer.
Yeah.
I think I saw Claire today. This lady walking down, looking very smart, down towards the Albion as I was coming home. And I thought, I'm sure that was Claire, but she didn't see me.
Ooh,
So she kind of looked over.
Maybe she got a lunch date with somebody.
No, it was tonight. It was this evening.
Right.
But you never know, quite possibly.
Yeah.
Her mum died a couple of days ago.
Did she?
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Oh.
She'd been ill for a long time, and she'd been,
She has.
getting palliative care, and then she got better again, and then, it's just,
Yeah.
so they kind of knew it was going to happen. So, but it's still a bit of a shock to her.
Oh dear.
Seems to be hanging in there.
Yeah. Yes, she did a lot for her mum, didn't she?
She did, yeah.
She had to kind of put her own life on hold a bit, didn't she?
Yeah, well, her sister was living with her mum, supposed to be a carer, but she wasn't coping very well either. So Claire was kind of looking after both of them, I think. So don't know what's going to happen to her sister now. So.
No, was it her mum's house that she was staying in?
No, I think it actually belonged to Claire and her sister, but it had been her mum's house, but I think she'd already left it to them.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen there. Claire's always short of money and things, and she could do with but I don't even think her heating system works at home at the moment, so she can't afford to get it fixed.
Oh dear.
I'd get someone in to fix it, except she won't let me. So.
She won't get many gardening jobs in the winter, I suppose, will she?
No, well, she used to come and help me out a bit, but she's been so busy with her mum, she's not been able to. But I suppose that will mean that in the near future she might want some work. She's a good decorator.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Used to come and help me quite a lot. So.
Yeah. And you're always busy. You've always
not half, missus.
Yeah.
You get paid.
Sometimes, yeah. Not a lot though, David. For some reason, people won't pay round here.
No, I was going to say, and they don't pay for a long while.
Yeah. I'm quite lucky, actually, in fairness. I've got some very good customers that keep coming back for more, which either means I'm not charging enough or that they appreciate the work I do. I like to think it's appreciating the work, but it's probably more likely I don't charge enough. But but they never even ask for estimates now. They just say, come and do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anne, do you know who invited the one show to Arnside?
No, I think it was something to do. Somebody was organising it because of the Ukrainians being here. We have quite a good group of Ukrainians, and I think it was to show our village, welcoming. I think it was something like that.
Yeah, we have one of the highest populations of them.
Yes, I can believe it. I know quite a few of them.
50 families, I think we have in the village, which is quite a lot, really.
In private houses, separate private houses.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I meet them because they have English lessons in the EI.
Yeah.
And there's a thing on a Monday morning called a cafe. You can go and have a chat and a cup of coffee.
That's nice.
And we've been going. Then after they finish their lesson, they come and we chat with them, which helps them to use their language. Yeah,
it's good. It's one of the nice things about this village is they're always doing something like that here.
Yeah. And one of them, a very confident lady, she's joined the choir.
Good. Just sings in Ukrainian.
No, she sings. Mind you, I was trying to learn just a greeting in Ukrainian.
Yeah.
I thought that would be a good thing to do. So I got on the YouTube. I'll have to look at it again. But part of the difficulty is I realised how difficult it was for them because they've got the Cyrillic alphabet.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to read. It's
very similar to Russian, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. But it really must be extra difficult for them to learn it. Really, yeah.
We had a little girl from Belarus for a while that came to stay, and she was like that. But because they didn't, the Google Translate didn't translate into Belarusian. It just translated into Russian. But she understood that. So most of the time. So
yeah.
I find it very strange about languages that you have one language that's very similar to another one. I can understand where the languages get their roots from and things like, in the West, we have Latin as a common root to a lot of things. And, obviously with the various nationalities coming into countries and migrating and things, you get influences and names and stuff like that. Yeah. But to have a whole language that's very similar is really weird. Yeah.
Well, but I found if you learn a second language more easily than if children don't learn a first language early. If they're, these poor kids who are locked in a cupboard or something and don't come out till they're 9, they find it incredibly difficult to learn because language is easy before 6.
Yeah.
And then they can become, it's easy to learn a second one. And when you've got 3, the 4th is even easier than that. And it's amazing. And I also found I could do a bit of English, German and French. And I could read Dutch.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was.
Well, it's quite similar to German, isn't it?
It's
So,
similar. It was similar,
yeah.
but you know, you could just read it
Yeah.
because you've got the other influences. It was surprising.
Yeah. Bless you.
Oh, thank you.
They say it takes 5 times as long to learn a language when you're older.
Yeah,
Wow.
I believe that.
Wow.
Well, my 10-year-old granddaughter can speak Spanish, English, Catalan, and now she's learning German.
That's great.
Wow.
It's great.
Yeah.
This
And
is when
next
you've taken
it'll be Mandarin, so she'll have 5.
Yeah, 'cause she's got
Mandarin?
English parents
Yes.
and she's living in Spain. I mean, she's exposed to 2. And it's wonderful when kids, and sometimes they have, if they've got parents who speak different languages, you know, that really helps the child to get it, doesn't it?
But the Scandinavians, they speak English like an English person.
Yeah.
They've barely got an accent.
So do they speak Catalan on the islands then as well?
They learn it in school.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know it went
get
that far.
mixed up with Castellano and Catalan, which is the one at Barcelona. Is that Catalan?
That's Catalan, yeah.
Yeah, they learn that.
The red and yellow, yeah.
Yeah, they learn that at school.
It's a nice language.
I think we're ridiculous. I mean, I have a lot to say about education. And I honestly feel we fail our children in many places. In our nurseries, that's where we should be teaching languages.
Yeah, totally agree.
That's where it should
Yeah.
be. Not wait till they're in the secondary school.
Yeah, it's too hard then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I said before 6, they absorb it like a sponge.
Yeah. No, we had a German au pair and we wanted her to speak German to ours, but she wouldn't for some reason. She's got her own daughter now, who, of course, is bilingual and has been right from the word go.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was an au pair in Spain, they said I didn't speak English properly, correctly. They wanted me to speak like the Queen.
The Queen's English, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she made me listen to records of how the BBC spoke English.
Yeah.
She said, that's how I want you to talk to my children.
So what happened?
Well, it all went horribly wrong.
The Celtic languages are so widespread and they're all so similar.
Yeah.
The Welsh, Cornish, Basque, Breton, and the northern Italian one. They all sound very, very similar, and they are understandable by the other people.
I thought Basque was the odd one out, though. I thought Basque was the one that was different to everything and thought to be one of the oldest languages because it's weird.
Ancient.
I think you'll find it's very similar to the Celtic languages.
It might be, yeah.
Because it's the Celtic area of Spain, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I do have to make this statement in support of Pete, right? Obviously, Pete can't speak good King's English, can he? Because he's from Cornwall.
He's a foreigner.
He's got a disability. Yeah.
Well,
he's got a disability. That's a good idea. Get claiming on that, Pete.
But wherever I'm a guest speaker, they love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying nothing.
No, you said.
Where does the name Kernau come from? Do you know? Is that
it's a Cornish language.
I know it's Cornish, but does it
Cornish for Cornwall?
Does it go pre-Roman?
Kernau.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Basically, Mybian Kernau means sons of Cornwall.
Yeah.
Mybian means sons.
Because Welsh doesn't, does it? So Welsh just means foreigner.
Well,
but if you talked about Mybian Glyndŵr, right, which is sons of Glyndŵr, Mybian Kernau, 2 different languages, but the names of those similar. 2 words are basically the same.
Yeah.
The Wales is supposed to mean foreigner, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
But Cornwall was West foreigner.
Yeah. Oh. So west of the foreigners, yes.
Yep.
Because William Wallace, William of Wales, William the foreigner.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. What we're going to do? We're going to crack on. And we're going to go back to this. And obviously, I've just realised again, oh my God, if I just not talked nonsense for a couple of minutes, you could have had some decent stuff out of me. All right, it's Pete's fault.
Yeah. I'll go with
You know,
that.
it's all Pete's fault. If Pete didn't turn up, each week, make his contribution to the classes, these classes would go a lot.
Yeah, he's such a bad influence, isn't he?
Yes. Do you know what I'm going to do is get John back.
Right. Gosh, is that the time?
Right. Okay. Okay. Although the site today lacks the encircling ditch and bank, again, that's a change in something that Trina was talking about, but verbally, but a change in what we're seeing, the change in the vista. Excavation has shown, limited excavation, that this used to be a henge monument, possibly the oldest in the British Isles. So if this monument, the stones date to, Adrina wanted to know the date. So if the stones were put there 5,500 years ago, then a henge monument might be 6,500 years old. The stones are thin slabs, really, approximately only 30 centimeters thick, which you would think that they're a lot thicker than that, with sharply angled tops. Keep that, Margaret. 4 up to about 5 meters high were originally elements of a stone circle. Now, this is the point. A stone circle of up to 12 stones, but you saw those other holes with no stones in them. Were they moved? Were stones ever in them in the first place? I would say that the stones were never in them in the first place. And then that links in with a point that Margaret wants to make. I may as well make this now, right? It's believed by Martin Carruthers of the University of Islands and Islands that each of these stones represented a family, right? And they would have erected a stone in the sockets in the ground that were available to erect the stones, except it only accommodated the representations of 5 families. Therefore, that means that there was no stones in the other holes. There's no real indications that were stones in the other holes. There may have been, but there may not have been. And the other thing as well is, I don't know if any of you ever done this, right? But if you put a stone in a hole, right, it's far easier putting a stone in a hole than it is getting a stone out of a hole. So and there would be a lot of evidence to say that the stone had been moved. And this is the same problem that we get with Avebury. So these are laid out in an ellipse of about 30 meters diameter on a level platform of 44 meters diameter. So in other words, these are the stone circle is 32 meters across from stone to stone, if that's the way you want to look at stone to hole, whatever. And then the platform itself, from basically the ditch to the ditch, is 44 meters across. So that's the platform. The ditch comes first. So the ditch is cut into rock by as much as 2 meters. It's a 2 meter wide ditch, we believe, which is 2 meters deep by 7 meters wide, surrounded by an earthen bank. The earthen bank is on the outside with a single entrance into the area, a single causeway, henge monument. So, interestingly enough, right? Very interesting enough. If we look at one of the other images, right? That there faces the site of Barn House, which is the settlement. So if we go back again and we again type in, again, we can do this. It's not a problem. So if we type in Stenness, right, and we look at the lay of the land, Stenness. If we look at the lay of the land again, and we go with that, and we look at a little bit of a map, right, we sort of look at that, and basically what we've got is, as we go in, the entrance to this points towards the Barn House settlement. Now that's really interesting. We mentioned about the Barn House settlement last week, and I think we showed you an image. So that's really, really interesting that it sort of faces the Barn House settlement. The entrance faces towards the Neolithic Barn House settlement. So the thing is, the Barn House settlement came after this site. So what is going on? You know, how much of this is, yeah. So the watchstone stands outside the circle, as we know. It's way out of the circle, and we know that the watchstone is 5.6 meters tall. And we know about the smaller stones. Now, interestingly enough, so other smaller stones include a square stone setting in the center of the circle platform. Now, what we want to do, we want to go back to that. I thought we weren't going to do that, but we are going to do that. So if we go back to that again, we go back out again and we look at a plan, that square. What is that in the middle? What is that square inside the circle? What is that?
It's a half.
Is it?
Looks like a half.
Interesting. Well, you may be right there, because inside there they found cremated bone, charcoal, and pottery have been found inside that square. Now, interesting enough, we're talking about a half. This is referred to as a half, similar to one found at Barn House. There's a similar one like that to Barn House, same dimensions. So very yes, we can think about that. We can, yeah, we'll just go with that, Margaret. That's fine. So animal bones have been found inside the ditch, in the ditch itself. And the other thing as well is with the pottery found in that sort of square, it's very similar pottery to what has been found at Skara Brae and Mice Howe, which is 1.2 kilometers to the southeast. Based on radiocarbon dating, it's thought that work on the site had begun. What we're talking about, this is the point. One of the dates tells us at least 5,100 years ago, but we could go way, way back than that. And this is this point that we mentioned, that one of the dates is 5,100 years ago, and the dates might go a lot earlier, up to 6,500 years ago. Massive that. So what we're going to do before we talk about traditions involving this site, I just want to mention this, and then we're going to have to finish, because I'm running out of fumes. So we'll do this first, and we'll do the other stuff, and then we'll go from there. So, Margaret, whilst I'm trying to get my voice, did that answer your point about the weird slopes of the stone?
That they're all meant to be represent a family.
Representative of an individual family, yeah.
Individual families.
So when you think about this, right, these stones, basically somebody at one time, we're going to go with this, you've got this ditch dug around the outside, and there's a bank around the outside of that. That was dug first. Nobody ever decided that there was going to be a stone circle. It might have been that those holes in the ground, 8, 9, 10 or whatever, were actually sockets for posts which have rotted away. That makes sense. And then 2, 3, 5 and 7 represented individual families, and they thought, okay, another family will come in and we'll chuck it there. At number 5, we'll chuck it there. At number 6, but they never arrived. Is that true or not? However, we'll be interested in this. The World Heritage status, the heart of Neolithic Orkney, was inscribed as a World Heritage Site in December 1999. And that's actually quite late, because, you know, this is a massive landscape. And the heart of Neolithic Orkney includes the standing stones of Stenness, Mice Howe, yes, that mound that we'll do again, Skara Brae, the Ring of Brodgar, and other nearby sites. It is managed by Historic Environmental Scotland. Statement of significance. This is what the statement of significance for this landscape tells us, right? Now, I would love to be able to say this with a really firm, powerful voice, but I can't. So you're just going to have to go with it. The monuments at the heart of Neolithic Orkney and Skara Brae proclaim the triumphs of the human spirit in early ages and isolated places. 2 ticks there. They were approximately contemporary with the mastabas of the archaic period of Egypt, 1st and 2nd dynasties. We're talking about mastabases, those platforms that the mastabas was like a rectangular or square structure, that on top of that you'd put another structure, on top of that would put another structure, and then you would lead to building the ancient pyramids. This is also on par with the brick temples of Samaria in Iraq and the first cities of the Harappan culture in India, Indus Valley. We've been there, and a century or two earlier than the golden age of China. Love it. Unusually fine for their early date and with a remarkable rich survival of evidence. These sites stand as a visible symbol of the achievements of early peoples away from the traditional centres of civilization. Stenness is a unique and early expression of the ritual customs of the people who buried their dead in tombs like Micehow and lived in settlements like Scarabray. There's 2 points there. You've got the idea of Micehow where burials and maybe something else. You've got the settlements of Scarabray and Barnhouse like that. You've got these monuments that mean something else. I would like to take challenge with one of the words there. That it basically mentions here, about these sites stand as a visible symbol of the achievements of early peoples away from the traditional centres of civilization. I want to challenge that statement by saying that maybe this was indeed an early centre of civilization. That's the only thing I'm going to take challenge with there. So what we're going to do is I would like to set as a backdrop now the last stuff about Stenness today, and then we definitely have to call it a night. Traditions and history. Let us imagine then families approaching Stenness at the appointed time of year. Men, women and children carrying bundles of bones collected together with the skeletons of disinterred corpses, skulls, mandibles, long bones, carrying also the skulls of totem animals, herding a beast that was one of several to be slaughtered for the feasting that would accompany the ceremonies. That is written by Rites of the Gods, 1981, by the prehistoric writer Aubrey Pearl. You can make of that as it is, but I like it. Not that I'd agree with all that, but what I will agree is it paints a picture. Women, children, skulls, bones, animals, slaughtering families. We'll stick with that and we'll leave it there. Even in the 1700s, the site was still associated with traditions and rituals by then relating to Norse gods. That point that Trina made, the original point of the monuments has now changed to Stenness, the Norse word, and obviously a different meaning. That was a good point that Trina asked earlier on. It was visited by Walter Scott in 1814, the Walter Scott. Other antiquarians documented the stones and recorded local traditions and beliefs about them. One stone, known as the Odin stone that we've covered, which stood in the field to the north of the henge, was pierced by a circular hole and was used by local couples for plighting engagements by holding hands through the gap. So that's where you've got to take Idris, Trina, to sort of get yourself sort of into the marriage state. It was associated with other ceremonies and believed to have magical power. This is the Odin stone. There was a reported tradition of making all kinds of oaths or promises with one hand in the Odin stone. This was known as taking the vow of Odin. So in other words, a majorly important monument destroyed in December 1814 by Captain Mackay, a recent immigrant to Orkney, decided to remove them on grounds that local people were trespassing and disturbing his lands by using the stones in rituals. This caused outrage, and he was stopped after destroying one other stone and toppling another at the ring of Stenness. The topple stone was right, yes, sorry, I didn't know this bit, I should have read this. The topple stone was re-erected in 1906, along with some inaccurate reconstructions inside the circle. There you go. Mucking around with things in 1906. We mentioned that earlier on. This is what I don't approve of. In the 1970s, a dolmen structure was toppled. Since there were doubts as to its authenticity, the two upright stones remain in place. So in other words, in the 1970s, they toppled one stone and is it that one in front? I think Martin was talking that stone there in front of those two stones is part of that stone, and I think it may have been erect and they toppled it over deliberately. A picture of the stones of Stenness featured on the cover of Van Morrison's album, The Philosopher's Stone, and the Odin stone is depicted on Julian Cope's album Discover Odin. The stones are also the setting for Laureen McKennett's song Standing Stones from her album Parallel Dreams, concerning a pair of star-crossed lovers who meet at the Odin stone only for the man to meet a tragic fate. On that note, I feel really depressed. Are there any questions?
No.
Can I ask a probably stupid one, because I'm so new to all this? Is there anything known of the reasons for building these stone monuments everywhere? You know, the social context of it, or is it known or not?
My interpretation is that every answer is correct, because most of these were used over such an incredible length of time that no answer is accurate. Therefore, say for example, let's just look at the example of Stenness. They dig a ditch and they put a bank on the outside, right? Yeah. Then somebody thought, oh, what we're going to do is put some posts in the inside, right, which are not related to the ditch and bank on the outside. So, but archaeologists interpret the two as the same event, but they're not. Back to the point that Trina made. And then what they're thinking, oh, the posts have rotted down, and then we're going to put standing stones in them, right? As we see with the interpretation.
Yeah, but as I said, what would the people of the time, which, you know, you can't get into the heads quite, and it's wonderful to try and imagine, what was their reason for doing the ditch or anything? What you know, is there anything actually known about that, or is it still a big mystery of time?
Right, what I'm going to say, you're overcomplicating it. My answer is that if you look at these steps as individual steps rather than one step as a whole, it makes it easy to understand. If you put it all together, it makes it impossible to understand, because each process is an individual process.
Yes.
Not an overall process. It's basically like saying, right, okay, let's look at it this way, and let's just be really simple, right? You meet somebody, you fall in love with them. The first thing is not to have children. And then you're with each other for a year and you start discussing, you decide to get married or you have children. It doesn't necessarily mean when you meet that person, you're going to marry them, have children, grow old or get divorced.
No, but if a group of people are going out to build a ditch that's 7 feet wide or 2 feet deep or whatever meters.
7 meters.
I mean, there has to be, you tend to feel that there was a reason for doing that.
Well, actually, was it all done in the same week? The answer is no.
No, it wouldn't be in the same week. But as I say, there'd be a reason to stop.
There's a point there, right? There is a point. There is an answer to your question. You've just done it yourself, right? Because these people didn't have time to do all these things at once, right? There's an answer in the time taken to do it, right? So obviously they're able to do it in times when they're not plowing their land. They're able to do it in times when they're not looking after their animals. They're having to do it in times when they're not having to do this and that, right? So it's done in times when they've got times to do it. And those times to do it are going to be in times when they've got available spare time. And that's basically coming to what's closer to the answer.
Yeah.
Forensic archaeology.
What Carl's saying is, no, we don't know why they built them, but there are theories, and any one of those can be right.
Right. Yeah.
Because, like you said, it takes a lot of organization and a lot of time to build. So there must have been a reason for doing it. Must have been a
reason. That's where I was at. But I wondered if those reasons are known.
That would be a very significant reason
in the midst of
putting all that effort in as well.
No, there's no physical evidence to support whatever the reason was.
Right.
So.
Right.
And it's done over a long period of time. The point is, right, Andy's right in what he's just said, right, but the other point as well is it's done at a time when they got time to do it. That's the only answer to your question.
Yeah.
That's the only answer we can give you. That's like a tiny little bit of a 5% answer. Right, thank you for that. And Andy next.
The description that you read about them bringing their stones of the bones of their ancestors and doing all the rest of it, which I don't, as a theory, I don't have any problem with. Do they actually have any evidence of that here? Any bones whatsoever other than the animal bones in the ditch?
No, we don't have any evidence of human bones.
Okay,
no,
right.
So
that's a shame.
Basically, Aubrey Pearl was just it was just like a statement being made.
Yeah, it's a good theory.
Fancy Bull statement. It's just like one of those things.
You know the what? Sorry, have you finished?
Yes, thank you.
No, I was just about to say, Andy. Right, last night I was just about to go to bed, and there was one of my sheep going bar, right? And they were all waiting for their food at 11:30 last night. So I went out and fed them. Right, that's an answer to why she was going bar. Right.
Yes.
There are little answers to understand, but because it's such a long period of time that these were constructed, right?
Yeah.
These are only partial answers to what these sites were used for. You can't always tell. Basically, nobody ever set out that over 2,000 years, this is how Stonehenge is going to be built. Absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
It was built for different reasons over different periods of time. That is the answer. Andy, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, Margaret.
I just wondered about the watchstones. Just about all of these circles have a watchstone. Did they build that first? Do they know if they were the first stones to be built before the circle?
If the watchstone was part of another stone circle, then it's part of another experience altogether. So therefore, it's not linked to Stenness at all.
Interesting, though. That's an interesting idea that they'd erect one stone and then geometrically measure everything from that one as well as a building process. Yeah.
Because nearly all the stone circles do have a watchstone, like Long Meg.
Yeah.
Is separate from the others, and there did used to be one at Castlerig, which
that's right. It's in the wall now, isn't it?
Now, so kind of set apart. Yeah, and I just wondered if they erected that first. So they could gauge where the rest of the circle was going to go.
The main thing is it's a part of a long experience. It's a part of a long. There's many chapters to this story.
Yeah.
It's not one, and you cannot look at this as one chapter. If you do, you're going to fail.
But it's strange how all these circles are erected in a similar fashion.
Yes, it is, and
there must have been. And there's over 50 in Cumbria alone.
Yeah.
And it all started on Orkney, apparently.
Well, Long Meg is, they reckon, and Castlerig are as old as the ones on Orkney.
I would not disagree with you there either.
Yeah, Castlerig's the oldest.
Yeah, yes, I've got a book here.
The ones at Billum are the oldest.
Says the past is a different country.
Yeah.
They do things differently there.
But it is Jeffrey Wainwright.
The ability to produce an almost perfect circle every time leads to that. They must have had quite a high level of intelligence to do that.
Yeah.
But this was built in an ellipse, which is a lot more complicated than a circle.
It is interesting that they all follow very similar patterns, though, isn't it?
Yeah, they must have been coordinated by somebody.
Dave.
And I wonder if it was the whole family that got involved, or if they just left it to the, certain members of the group, the strong ones.
Kevin.
The problem is it would probably involve everybody at different times.
I'd like to come back to this reason. All these circles are built, and they'll take very long times to build. And yet there are so many repeated, and there has to be some urge to do it in some sense. That's
and there may have been different reasons for an urge to do it, because it's like a standard thing. And
there have been different reasons, but I say there's so many of them. It's amazing. It's a real mystery, I feel. It's just.
May have been a group of travelling stone circle builders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all ended up in Millham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I've got no other reason to ever go back to Millham, and I don't think I ever will. Right. David, anything you'd like to say?
No, a friend of mine studied stone circles. He says at Castle Rig, he's got a theory. He's actually got a much bigger stone circle there, which a lot of stones have gone into the farm, and of course the road has gone right through it. But he reckons it's
Oh, that's
a
interesting.
lot bigger than the one that's there. And the road goes right through it.
I've heard of it. I've heard of this. There was a survey, and it indicated that Castle Rig was a lot bigger. David's correct.
Ooh.
David is correct. He's correct on that. But obviously, the evidence is trying to find. So the watchstone was actually part of a bigger circle, not just an individual watchstone. And this is the point. This is what we're talking about with Castle Rig. That if the watchstones at Stenness were part of another stone circle, then they're not watchstones at all. So we've got to be very careful with the words we use for these types of monuments. It's a bit dispiriting for me to hear the word watchstone, because it actually may have been part of another monument altogether. So thank you for that, David. Thank you. If David hasn't got anything else, I'm going to ask Peter.
Not really, no. It's an amazing thing that was done, and I obviously had a very significant reason for doing it.
Yeah.
And so many people from so many wide areas are doing the same thing. I mean, we have the stone circles down in Cornwall, very similar to the ones they've got up there.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do,
history, isn't it? It's absolutely amazing.
what if Peter finishes his point, I'm going to add something to what he just said. All right, he has finished his point. Right, one thing that we're on Dartmoor and Bodmin Moor, that what they've done, they've found the tops of stone circles in upland areas, and they thought, well, there's only one way that these stone circles can exist surrounded in soil, because they were surrounded in soil. Because in these upland areas, the soil would have eroded away, right? But the soil has been built up around the stones, meaning that the stones were meant to be hidden. That's another strange aspect, and that's also similar when you look at Mice Cow, that may have started off as a stone circle that has been covered in a mound. And finally, what we need is Drina and Idris, and that's it.
No comment. Thank you. It's been good. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Carl, sorry, I was going to say, are there any stone circles earlier than these ones in Europe?
No, I'm going to say no, not that I'm aware of. Not in Europe. They seem to be later, but obviously
there is in Egypt. There's a 7,000-year-old one in Egypt, I read.
Yeah, well, that's bloody Egypt, isn't it? They have the first pyramids. They have the first. Egypt has the first Nile River. It's
but the stone circle, the same as we have in Egypt.
The standing stones at Karnak are entirely different to all those. Aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that
still standing stones.
I was just thinking, if there are people traveling, and we know that people went from Orkney down to Stonehenge, for instance, the ideas and will travel with them. So
the point is, what may have happened is that Stonehenge was being developed, and somebody basically said, well, in Orkney, what we're doing, where these holes are, where you've got posts, we're chucking stones in. And they said, well, we haven't got any stones, we'll have to bring them in from somewhere. So you've got the ones at Marlborough Dam, which is 14 miles away. So,
you think someone ran in, oh, you want to see what they've done in Orkney this year?
In a Dorset accent.
Yeah.
Good night, all.
Bye,
Good night, David.
Good
to see you.
See you next Tuesday, David. Right. My God, David said good night all, just as we were just about to finish.
Yep.
Anyone got anything else to say?
No, that was very good. Thank you.
Yeah, good
I'm
one.
glad you approve, love.
Yes, really.
Hope you get through the interview for the filming.
Yeah,
Yes,
Mm.
Good
here.
luck.
get your voice back.
Do
Just-
some
yeah.
gargling with salt water.
Well,
So
I should
you're going to
stop. I
want
should
me to
stop.
do the half past 11 one tomorrow, are you?
Well, come on at 11, Steve, Pete, and we'll see how we are.
So you want me to do it?
Well, we'll see how we are a minute, Pete, and we'll just
Okay,
give it a
fair
go.
enough.
And if anyone wants to join us at 11 tomorrow for our Wackaday Club from Barry, if you sign in at 11:30, you can join us. I tell you what, right? Having a Donald Trump supporter, right? And somebody who inspects people's houses. Somebody who's as mad as a box of frogs. There's me and Pete, right? And there's Richard, right? You can't get a stranger group of people than that.
True.
And what do you talk about? What do you do?
Absolute nonsense. Right now, we talk about the history and archaeology of Barry in a weird way, but then again, it always comes on to something else. Yeah, just think it's our side, and you'll be fine.
Okay, look after yourself.
Yeah.
I will, and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.
Okay,
If
okay.
anyone's got anything else to say, Margaret, and
No,
Trina, Peter, or Andy, if not, we'll see you next week, next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Okay,
Bye.
good night, all.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Night,
Thanks,
all.
Carl.
Night. It's my pleasure. My pleasure. My pleasure. See you, Trini. This is gonna go out this has been pre-recorded, but obviously don't forget to like, subscribe. My voice is really bad. Any suggestions? I'm I've got, oh god, it's so frustrating. That I need my voice now for work, and I need to get something done about it quick. So anyone got any suggestions, please let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Take a look at